They say money can't buy class, but it can certainly buy audacity. On a rainy Tuesday at JFK Airport, a young prodigy named Maya sat in seat 1A, holding a ticket she had worked her entire life to earn. But within minutes, she was being humiliated, harassed, and threatened by a billionaire couple who refused to believe a black girl belonged in first class. They thought the man in the hoodie across the aisle was just another nobody ignoring the drama. They were wrong. That man was the owner of the entire airline, and he was about to teach them a lesson that would cost them everything. This is the story of Flight 902, and the day Karma flew supersonic. The persistent hum of the ventilation system inside John F. Kennedy International Airport usually faded into white noise for seasoned travelers, but for 22-year-old Maya Williams, it sounded like a symphony. She sat near the floor-to-ceiling windows of Terminal 4, clutching a boarding pass that felt heavier than the paper it was printed on. Aerolux Airways, Flight AL902, JFK to London Heathrow. Seat 1A, first class. She took a photo of it, her hands trembling slightly, and texted it to her mother in Chicago. "I'm really here, Mama. I'm actually doing it." Maya adjusted the strap of her worn-out violin case. It was an antique, a literal family heirloom passed down through 3 generations, and inside it lay her future, an invitation to audition for the Royal Academy of Music in London on a full scholarship. The flight ticket had been part of a diversity grant from a prestigious arts foundation. For a girl who had grown up practicing scales in a cramped apartment where the neighbors banged on the walls if she played past 8 Moss p.m., the idea of a lie-flat bed and champagne service felt like a hallucination. Across the terminal, sitting quietly in the corner of the gate area, was a man who looked like he belonged in a tech startup's break room rather than a luxury flight. Alexander Thorne, 34 years old, wore a charcoal hoodie, dark jeans, and scuffed white sneakers. He was typing furiously on a laptop, a half-drunk coffee balancing precariously on his knee. To the casual observer, Alex looked like an exhausted coder or a graduate student. In reality, he was the founder and CEO of Aerolux Airways, the fastest-growing boutique airline in the world. He was worth $4.2 billion. Alex was flying Ghost today. It was a practice he maintained once a quarter, flying his own metal, disguised as a regular passenger, to gauge the service, the cleanliness, and the attitude of his staff without the red carpet treatment. He hated the undercover boss cliches, but he knew that spreadsheets didn't tell him how his customers actually felt. He needed to see it. "Group 1, first-class passengers, you are welcome to board," the gate agent announced, her voice smooth and practiced. Maya stood up, taking a deep breath. She smoothed down her blazer, a thrift store find she had tailored herself, and checked her hair in the reflection of the window. She wanted to look like she belonged, even if she felt like an imposter. As she stepped toward the jet bridge, a Rimowa aluminum carry-on clipped her heel hard. "Excuse me," a sharp, icy voice cut through the air. "You're blocking the priority lane." Maya stumbled, turning around to see a woman who looked as if she had been carved out of marble and disdain. She was tall, wearing a Chanel tweed suit that cost more than Maya's entire tuition, with oversized sunglasses despite being indoors. Beside her was a man, older, red-faced, wearing a bespoke navy suit and tapping a gold watch that looked heavy enough to anchor a boat. These were the Van der Hovens, Beatrice and Richard. Richard van der Hoven was a real estate mogul, known in the tabloids for evicting orphanages to build parking lots. They were Platinum Global members, the type of passengers who expected the plane to wait for them. "Oh, I'm sorry," Maya said, stepping aside quickly. "I'm boarding Group 1, too." Beatrice van der Hoven lowered her sunglasses, her eyes scanning Maya from her natural hair to her scuffed boots. She let out a short, derisive laugh. "Group 1? Honey, the cleaning crew boards from the rear door. You're confused." No, I have a ticket," Maya said, her voice dropping in volume. "Seat 1A. Richard pushed past her, not even making eye contact. "Just move, kid. We don't have time for charity cases blocking the gangway. Beatrice, come on." They swept past her, the scent of expensive perfume and entitlement trailing in their wake. Maya stood there for a second, her face burning. She looked at the gate agent, who offered a sympathetic but hurried smile. "Just go ahead, sweetie. Don't mind them." Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Don't let them ruin this," she told herself. "You earned this." She walked down the jet bridge, the excitement dampening into a cold knot of anxiety. Behind her, Alex Thorne closed his laptop, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and followed. He had heard every word. His jaw tightened as he scanned his digital boarding pass. Seat 2A, directly behind Maya. "Let's see how this plays out," Alex muttered to himself. The cabin of the Aerolux Boeing 787 Dreamliner was a sanctuary of soft cream leather, walnut wood accents, and ambient lighting. It was designed to lower blood pressure the moment you stepped inside. However, as Maya entered, the atmosphere was already spiking with tension. She found seat 1A. It was magnificent, a private suite with a sliding door, but as she moved to place her violin case in the overhead bin, she found it already stuffed with a massive fur coat and a hard-shell briefcase. "Excuse me," Maya said softly to the man in 1B, Richard van der Hoven. "Is this your bag? I just need a little space for my instrument." Richard didn't look up from his iPad. "Find another bin. That one is full." "But this is the bin for seat 1A, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can't check this. It's a violin." Beatrice, who was settling into seat 1K across the aisle, snapped her fingers. "Stewardess, we have a situation." A flight attendant hurried over. Her name tag read Veronica. She was the senior purser, a woman in her 40s with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alex, settling into 2A behind them, recognized her name from a few internal HR complaints regarding attitude, but nothing had ever stuck. "Yes, Mrs. van der Hoven. How can I help you?" Veronica asked, her voice dripping with deference. "This girl," Beatrice gestured at Maya as if she were a piece of trash left on the carpet, "is harassing my husband and trying to shove her luggage on top of his fragile items. And frankly, I don't believe she's supposed to be in this cabin. It's making us uncomfortable." Veronica turned to Maya. The warmth vanished from her face instantly. "Miss, may I see your boarding pass, please?" "I already showed it at the gate," Maya said, hugging her violin case. "I'm in 1A. "Please, just show it to me," Veronica sighed, tapping her foot. Maya fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking harder now. She pulled up the QR code. Veronica scanned it with her eyes, looking for a flaw, a mistake, a reason to send her back to economy. "It says 1A, Maya whispered. "It's probably an upgrade glitch," Richard grunted, loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "Aerolux systems are garbage. They let anyone in here with miles these days. It ruins the exclusivity." Veronica looked torn. She knew the van der Hovens were high-value frequent flyers. She also saw a young black girl in a thrift store blazer who clearly didn't fit the profile of their usual first-class clientele. In the high-pressure environment of pre-flight boarding, Veronica made a calculation. Appease the loud millionaires, deal with the quiet girl later. "Miss," Veronica said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "I see the ticket is valid, but..." We have a storage issue here. And Mr. van der Hoven is a platinum partner. I'm going to need you to place your instrument in the coat closet at the front. And perhaps you wouldn't mind switching seats. We have a lovely seat in premium economy that has much more leg room for— No, Maya said, surprised by her own voice. No. I paid for this ticket. Well, I have a scholarship. This is my seat. And my violin stays with me. It's worth more than everything I own. Listen here, you little brat, Beatrice hissed, leaning across the aisle. We are trying to fly to London for a merger that is worth more than your entire bloodline. We need quiet. We need space. We don't need a diversity hire practicing fiddle next to us. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. The diversity hire comment hit her like a physical slap. She looked around, hoping someone would intervene. The other passengers were burying their heads in magazines, afraid to get involved. Except for the man in 2A. Alex unbuckled his seatbelt. He had seen enough to fire Veronica on the spot. But he needed to see how deep the rot went. He needed to see if anyone on his payroll had a spine, or if the culture of his company had become this toxic. Is there a problem here? Alex asked, leaning forward. Veronica spun around, annoyed at the interruption. She saw the hoodie and the sneakers. Sir, please stay in your seat. This is a private matter between the crew and this passenger. It doesn't look private, Alex said calmly. It looks like you're bullying a paying customer because these two, he gestured to the van der Hovens, are loud. Richard van der Hoven laughed, a wet, phlegmy sound. Oh, look, Beatrice, the tech support boy wants to be a hero. Mind your business, son. The adults are talking. I'm just saying, Alex continued, his eyes locking onto Veronica. Her ticket is for 1A. That is her bin space. If Mr. van der Hoven has too many bags, his bags should be checked. That's the policy, isn't it? Veronica flushed red. Sir, I am the purser on this flight. I determine where the baggage goes. She turned back to Maya, her patience gone. Miss, give me the instrument. Now, or I will have you escorted off the plane for non-compliance. We are closing the doors in 3 minutes. Maya gripped the handle of her case so tight, her knuckles turned white. A single tear escaped, tracking through the makeup she had carefully applied that morning. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. I'll take it. Richard reached up and grabbed the handle of the violin case, yanking it roughly. No! Maya screamed. That was it. Alex stood up. He didn't just lean forward. He rose to his full height, 6'2", filling the aisle. He didn't look like a coder anymore. He looked like a storm front moving in. Take your hands off her property, Alex commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a frequency of authority that made Richard freeze. Or what? Richard sneered, though he released the grip slightly. You going to fight me, boy? On a plane? Enjoy federal prison. I'm not going to fight you, Alex said, stepping between Maya and the van der Hovens. He looked at Veronica. Go get the captain. Now. Veronica scoffed. I am not disturbing Captain Miller for a passenger dispute. Sit down, or you'll be removed too. I said. Alex reached into his back pocket, pulling out not a wallet, but a slim black identification badge on a lanyard that he usually kept hidden in his carry-on. Get the captain. Tell him Alexander Thorne is in seat 2A, and I want to know why he allows his purser to violate federal aviation discrimination laws. The cabin went silent. Veronica stared at the badge. It wasn't a crew badge. It was the black titanium owner's access card. It had the Aerolux logo embossed in gold, and below it, simply, CEO, Founder. Her face drained of color so fast she looked like she might faint. Richard, however, was too arrogant to read the room. Alexander who? Who cares? I know the owner of this airline. We played golf in Aspen. Short guy, bald." Alex looked at Richard with a pitying smile. "That's the vice president of sales, Richard. He works for me." Alex turned to Maya, his expression softening instantly. "I'm sorry, miss. Please, sit in 1A. Put your violin in the bin. If Mr. van der Hoven's coat is in the way, I'll personally throw it onto the tarmac." The silence that befell the first-class cabin was not empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a submarine, diving past its crushed depth. The soft jazz music playing over the PA system, usually intended to soothe, now felt jarringly cheerful against the backdrop of impending doom. Veronica, the senior purser who had flown for 20 years, stared at the black titanium card in Alex's hand. Her brain was misfiring. She knew the training manuals. She knew the corporate hierarchy. She had seen Alexander Thorne's face in the quarterly newsletters, usually smiling next to a new aircraft acquisition. But seeing the man in the flesh, wearing a hoodie that looked like it had been through a wash cycle too many times, created a cognitive dissonance she couldn't overcome. Her hand, manicured to perfection in Aerolux crimson, reached out and hovered over the card, shaking violently. She didn't touch it. She withdrew her hand, as if the metal was radioactive. Veronica's voice cracked. She cleared her throat, trying to salvage a scrap of her authority. Surely there is a mistake. Mr. Thorne he is usually accompanied by an entourage, security details." "I don't need security to fly on my own airline, Veronica," Alex said, his voice dropping an octave, rumbling with a calm that was far scarier than shouting. "And I don't need an entourage to tell me when my staff is violating the core values of this company. The prompt was simple. Go. Get the captain." Richard van der Hoven, however, was not a man who recognized danger until it was biting him. He was a man accustomed to the world bending to his will, a man who believed that rules were for poor people, and that CEOs were people he met at country clubs, not boys in sneakers. "Oh, for God's sake, drop the act," Richard barked, unbuckling his seatbelt and standing up. He was shorter than Alex, but wider. His face flushed a dangerous shade of purple. "You stole a badge, or you printed it. I know how you people operate. Scams, grifts. Veronica, call the police. I want this imposter arrested for impersonating an officer of a company." Beatrice chimed in from her seat, adjusting her sunglasses, refusing to look at Alex directly. "It's pathetic, really. Trying to impress the girl. Just throw them both off, Richard. My champagne is getting warm." Alex didn't look at Richard. He kept his eyes locked on Veronica. 10 seconds, Veronica. Or you're not just fired. You're blacklisted from the industry." That broke her. Veronica spun on her heel, nearly tripping over her own feet, and sprinted toward the cockpit door. She punched in the access code with trembling fingers, the beeping sound echoing in the quiet cabin. She disappeared inside, and the heavy reinforced door clicked shut. For 2 minutes, nothing happened. Maya sat frozen in Seat 1A, clutching her knees. She felt like a spectator in a gladiatorial arena, terrified that the lions were about to turn on her. She looked up at Alex, who was still standing in the aisle, a human barricade between her and the van der Hovens. "You don't have to do this," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can just move. It's okay. I don't want you to get in trouble." Alex turned to her, and the storm in his eyes cleared instantly, replaced by a genuine warm softness. He crouched down so he was at eye level with her. "Maya, look at me. You are the customer. You paid. You have a right to be here. Never let anyone, especially people like them, make you feel like you need to shrink yourself to fit in their world. This is your world, too." Before Maya could respond, The cockpit door opened. It wasn't Veronica. It was Captain David Miller. Miller was a legend in aviation. Silver hair, 4 stripes on his shoulder boards, a man who had flown military sorties before transitioning to commercial. He walked with the heavy, deliberate steps of a man who commanded 200 tons of metal for a living. He scanned the cabin, his eyes passing over Richard, over Beatrice, and landing on Alex. Captain Miller didn't ask for ID. He didn't ask for an explanation. He stopped 3 feet from Alex, stood at attention, and extended his hand. "Mr. Thorne," the captain said, his voice booming with respect. "I didn't see your name on the VIP manifest. Welcome aboard, sir. It's an honor to have you flying with us." Richard van der Hoeven made a sound like a deflating tire. He slumped back into his seat, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Beatrice froze, her hand halfway to her champagne glass. "Good to see you, David," Alex said, shaking the pilot's hand firmly. "I apologize for the disruption. I was hoping for a quiet flight to London to review the new in-flight entertainment systems. Unfortunately, it seems we have a personnel issue." "And a passenger issue?" Captain Miller's gaze hardened as he looked at Veronica, who was cowering by the galley curtain. "I was briefed by the purser that there was a dispute over luggage." "There was a dispute over dignity," Alex corrected him. Mrs. Veronica attempted to force this young woman to move seats and check a fragile musical instrument to accommodate Mr. van der Hoeven's oversized coat. When I intervened, I was threatened. Captain Miller turned slowly to face Richard van der Hoeven. The pilot's face was stone. "Mr. van der Hoeven, you are a frequent flyer with us. You know the regulations regarding abusive behavior toward crew and passengers." Richard, realizing his reality was fracturing, tried to pivot to his usual tactic, bribery and bluster. "Now look here, Captain. Let's not overreact. The boy, Mr. Thorne, misunderstood. We were just negotiating space. I'm a personal friend of the board at J.P. Morgan. I'm sure we can smooth this over. Upgrade the girl, comp my flight, and we call it even?" Alex laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You think you can buy me, Richard? I own the plane you're sitting in. I own the fuel in the wings. I own the lease on the gate we're parked at." Alex turned to the captain. "David, do we have our slot for takeoff?" "We push back in 8 minutes, sir," Captain Miller replied. "If we miss it, we're delayed an hour due to weather coming in over the Atlantic." Alex nodded, calculating. He looked at the van der Hoevens. He could kick them off now. It would be easy. Security would come, drag them out, humiliated. But Alex saw the way Beatrice was looking at her phone, probably texting her lawyer. He saw the way Richard was already plotting his revenge spin. If he kicked them off now, they became victims. They would sue. They would spin a story to the press about an unstable CEO. No, Alex wanted them to sit in the discomfort. He wanted them to be trapped in a metal tube for 7 hours with the man they had tried to crush. He wanted to dissect them, financially and socially, while they were cruising at 35,000 feet. "We fly," Alex said. "We aren't going to delay 200 other passengers because of 2 bad apples. But David, the service protocols for rows 1B and 1K are suspended." "Sir?" the captain asked. "They stay on the plane," Alex said, his eyes glinting with a cold light. "But as of this moment, they are no longer first-class passengers. They are cargo that speaks." The fasten seatbelt sign pinged on, a sharp, authoritative tone that signaled the end of the boarding process. The heavy aircraft door thudded shut, sealing the cabin from the outside world. For Richard and Beatrice, the locking of that door sounded like a prison cell slamming shut. Usually, this was the time they reveled in. The pre-flight champagne, the hot towels, the obsequious fawning of the flight attendants. But today, the atmosphere in the first-class cabin was glacial. Veronica had been banished to the economy galley. In her place, a younger flight attendant named Sarah, someone Alex knew from a commendation letter he'd signed last month, was handling the premium cabin. She moved with quiet efficiency. She approached Maya in 1A first. "Ms. Williams, may I get you anything before we push back? Perhaps a sparkling water or some tea?" Maya, still reeling from the adrenaline, smiled shyly. "Water would be great. Thank you." Sarah then turned to Alex in 2A. "And for you, Mr. Thorne? A coffee?" "Black, please, Sarah." "Thank you." Then Sarah walked past row 1B and 1K. She didn't stop. She didn't look at them. She walked straight to the galley and began preparing the drinks. "Excuse me," Beatrice snapped, waving her hand. "Girl, we haven't ordered." Sarah poked her head out of the galley. Her expression was polite, but completely vacant of warmth. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I've been instructed by the owner of the airline that due to your earlier behavioral strike, hospitality service for your seats has been suspended for the duration of the flight to ensure the safety of the crew." "Safety?" Richard sputtered. "I want a scotch. This is kidnapping. You can't deny me service I paid $12,000 for." "You will be provided with water for hydration purposes," Sarah said calmly. "Anything else is considered a luxury privilege, which you have forfeited. Please lower your voice, or we will have to restrain you. We are taxiing." Richard turned to Alex, his face a mask of pure hatred. "You petty little... You think this is funny? Wait until we land. I'll have your license revoked. I know senators. I know people who can bury this airline in audits for a decade." Alex didn't even look up from his laptop. He was typing. "Richard, you're distracting me. I'm trying to look up your liquidity ratios." The plane lurched forward, the powerful Rolls-Royce engines humming as they began the taxi to the runway. The physical sensation of movement seemed to settle Maya. She looked back at Alex. "Are you really... do you really own all of this?" she asked, gesturing to the plane. Alex stopped typing and closed his laptop halfway. He smiled, a genuine, boyish grin that made him look 10 years younger. "Technically, the bank owns a lot of it. But yes, I started Aerolux 5 years ago. I was tired of flying, being miserable. I wanted to bring back the magic of it." "I've never flown first class," Maya admitted, touching the walnut veneer of her console. "I didn't know people could be so... mean." "Money amplifies who you are," Alex said softly. "If you're a jerk, money makes you a tyrant. If you're kind, money makes you a philanthropist. Don't let them scare you, Maya. Tell me about the violin. Why is it so important?" The plane turned onto the runway, the engines spooling up into a roar. Maya held her violin case as the G-force pressed them into their seats. "It was my grandfather's," Maya said, her voice gaining strength as the wheels left the ground. "He was a jazz musician in New Orleans. He played on street corners to feed his family. He bought this violin in 1950. It's not a Stradivarius, but it has his soul in it. When he died, my mum kept it under her bed. She worked 2 jobs so I could take lessons. This audition in London, it's the only way I can pay her back. It's the only way I can show her that her sacrifice mattered." Alex listened, really listened. He watched the way Maya's eyes lit up when she spoke about the music, about her mother. He saw the calluses on her fingertips, the mark of true dedication. "That's beautiful," Alex said. "What are you playing for the audition?" "Tchaikovsky, Violin Concerto in D major," she said. "It's ambitious." "Risk is the price of entry for greatness," Alex said. Across the aisle, Richard was fuming. He pulled out his phone, intending to connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi and start firing off emails to his legal team. He connected to the network Aerolux first. A splash page popped up. Access denied. Device ID blocked by administrator. "What the hell?" Richard muttered. He grabbed Beatrice's phone. He tried hers. Access denied. "He cut the internet," Richard whispered, horror dawning on him. "He cut us off." "So read a book, Richard," Beatrice hissed, though she looked equally panicked. "We'll handle it in London." "You don't understand, Bea," Richard said, sweat beading on his forehead. "I have a closing scheduled for 4 p.m. London time. If I don't authorize the wire transfer by signature, the deal collapses. I need that connection." Richard leaned across the aisle, desperation creeping into his voice. "Thorne. Hey. Look, okay. You made your point. Very funny. Turn the Wi-Fi back on. I have a business deal that expires in 6 hours. If I miss it, I lose a $40 million deposit." Alex slowly turned his head. The cabin was quiet now, cruising at altitude. The seatbelt sign flicked off. "You know, Richard," Alex said, opening his laptop fully again. "I was just reading about your business, Vanderhoven Estates. You specialize in high-end gentrification, specifically buying up low-income housing blocks, evicting the tenants on loopholes, and building luxury condos." "It's business," Richard said defensively. "It's the market. I see here," Alex tapped his screen, "that one of your current projects involves a block in Chicago, the South Side." "4th Street?" Maya gasped. She dropped her water glass. That's my street. That's where my building is." Alex looked at Maya, then back at Richard. His eyes went dead cold. "Is that so?" Alex said. "Small world." "It's a dilapidated block," Richard argued. "We're improving the neighborhood." "You're evicting 60 families," Alex corrected. "And you need this internet connection to finalize the bridge loan that lets you bulldoze Maya's home?" Richard went silent. The realization of who he was sitting next to and who held the switch to his digital life hit him like a sledgehammer. "I'm willing to pay," Richard stammered. "Name your price for the Wi-Fi password." 10,000, 50,000. Alex looked at Maya. "Maya, how much is your home worth to you?" "Everything," she whispered. Alex turned back to Richard. "Sorry, Richard. The price is too high. No Wi-Fi for you." "You can't do this!" Richard screamed, standing up, his face twisting. "You are sabotaging my business. This is illegal." "Actually," Alex said calmly, typing a command into his terminal, "I reserve the right to deny service to anyone who poses a security threat. And right now, your aggression is very threatening. But don't worry about your deal, Richard. I'm not just blocking your Wi-Fi." Alex hit the enter key with a satisfying clack. "I just bought the debt on your bridge loan from the holding bank," Alex said casually. "I have a friend at the private equity firm backing you. I just called in a favor. I own your loan now, Richard." Richard sank into his seat, his legs giving out. You what?" "And as the new creditor," Alex smiled, a shark-like grin, "I'm calling in the debt, immediately. You have until we land in London to pay me $40 million, or Vanderhoven Estates goes into immediate liquidation." The color drained from Richard's face so completely he looked like a corpse. Beatrice let out a strangled sob. "Enjoy the flight," Alex said, putting his headphones on. "I hear the in-flight movie is a comedy." 3 hours into the flight, the cabin lights were dimmed to a soft, twilight purple. To the rest of the plane, the world was asleep, suspended over the dark, churning waters of the Atlantic. But in the first 2 rows of Aerolux Flight 902, time had warped into a suffocating purgatory. Richard Vanderhoven sat motionless in seat 1B. The color had not returned to his face. He looked like a wax figure, left too close to a fire, melting, sagging, his structural integrity compromised. Every 5 minutes he would tap his phone screen, praying for a bar of service, praying that the no internet connection message was just a nightmare. It never was. Beside him, Beatrice had stopped speaking to him. She had donned her silk eye mask, but she wasn't sleeping. Her hands were clenched in her lap, twisting a diamond ring around her finger so tightly the skin was turning red. The silence between the couple was louder than the engines. It was the sound of a marriage built on transaction costs, suddenly facing a deficit. Across the aisle, the mood was different. It was quiet, but it was the quiet of a sanctuary. Maya was awake. She had her tray table down, a sheet of sheet music spread out on it, annotated with nervous pencil marks. She was air-playing, her fingers moving silently over imaginary strings, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. Alex, who had been reviewing flight telemetry data on his screen, noticed her restlessness. He slid his headphones off. "You can't hear the music if you don't let it out, Maya," he said softly, his voice barely rising above the hum of the ventilation. Maya looked up, startled. I don't want to disturb anyone. I know it's late." "It's a Dreamliner," Alex said, gesturing to the empty seats behind them in row 3 and 4. "The acoustic insulation is state-of-the-art. And frankly," he glanced at the slumped form of Richard, "I think the cabin could use a cleansing." "I can't," Maya whispered, glancing fearfully at Beatrice. "She'll yell again." "Let her," Alex said firmly. "Maya, you are flying to London to prove to a panel of strangers that you deserve a seat at their table. If you can't play in front of 2 people who hate you, how are you going to play for 1,000 people who love you?" The challenge hung in the air. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation to step into her power. Maya looked at her violin case. It looked battered and travel-worn, a stark contrast to the pristine leather of the first-class suite. Slowly, with trembling hands, she unbuckled the case. The smell of old wood and rosin wafted up, a scent that reminded her of home, of her mother's cooking, of the safety of her bedroom. She lifted the instrument. It was a dark, honey-colored wood, scarred from decades of use. She stood up. There wasn't much room in the aisle, but it was enough. She tucked the violin under her chin. She raised the bow. The first note was tentative, a wavering D that hung in the recycled air. Beatrice ripped her eye mask off. "Are you kidding me? I am trying to—" "Sit down, Beatrice," Richard croaked, his voice hollow. He didn't look at her. He was staring at the floor. "Just let it happen. We're already dead." Beatrice gaped at her husband, then turned her fury toward Maya, but something stopped her. Maya had closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, exhaling the fear, the imposter syndrome, the shame of the last few hours. And then she began to play Tchaikovsky. It wasn't just music. It was a weeping. The melody rose, complex and mournful, filling the cabin. The acoustics of the plane were strange, dry and tight, but the sound cut through the technological hum like a knife. Maya's fingers flew across the fingerboard, her vibrato intense and passionate. She wasn't playing for the audition anymore. She was playing for her mother, who was scrubbing floors in Chicago. She was playing for the apartment on 4th Street that Richard wanted to bulldoze. She was playing for every time she had been told to be quiet, to move, to step aside. Sarah, the flight attendant, stopped in the galley, a coffee pot in her hand, mesmerized. Alex watched Maya, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were wet. He saw the transformation. The shy, scared girl was gone. In her place was a virtuoso. She commanded the space. Her bowing arm was aggressive, driving the music forward, demanding to be heard. Even Beatrice was silenced. She stared at the girl she had called a diversity hire, unable to look away. The raw talent was undeniable. It was something money couldn't buy, something no amount of gentrification could manufacture. It was soul. For 5 minutes, the cabin existed in a suspended reality. There was no airline owner, no real estate tycoon, no victim. There was only the music, swirling in the turbulence, defying gravity. When Maya finished the movement, she let the bow hang in the air for a lingering second before lowering it. She was breathing hard, sweat glistening on her forehead. The silence returned, but it felt different now. It wasn't heavy. It was stunned. "My God," Sarah whispered from the galley. Alex didn't clap. He knew that clapping would break the spell. He just nodded, a slow, deep nod of respect. "You're ready, Maya," he said. "London won't know what hit them." Maya sat down, her hands shaking again, but this time from adrenaline, not fear. She carefully wiped the rosin off the strings and put the violin away. From across the aisle, a voice spoke up. It was Richard. "My mother played," he said. His voice was unrecognizable, quiet, stripped of all its bluster. "She played the cello. She wanted me to learn." Maya looked at him, wary. "I broke her bow when I was 7, Richard continued, staring at his hands. "Because I wanted a toy truck and she wouldn't buy it. I snapped it in half." He looked up at Maya, his eyes rimmed with red, looking old and terrified. "You play better than she did." It wasn't an apology. Men like Richard van der Hoven didn't know how to apologize. But it was a concession. It was the white flag of a man who realized, perhaps for the first time in decades, that he was the smallest person in the room. The sunrise over the British Isles was a bruised purple and grey, illuminating the clouds below like a rolling sea of slate. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed, signaling the initial descent into Heathrow. The cabin began the ritual of waking up. Hot towels were distributed to rows 2, 3, and 4. The smell of fresh croissants and brewing espresso filled the air. Sarah walked past row 1 with a tray of orange juice and pastries. She stopped at Alex's seat, then Maya's. "Breakfast, Miss Williams?" "Yes, please," Maya said, feeling a hunger she hadn't noticed before. Sarah placed a plate of fruit and a warm croissant on Maya's table. Then she turned to row 1. Beatrice was sitting up, her makeup reapplied, her armor back in place. She eyed the croissant on Maya's tray with hungry envy. "Water," Sarah said, placing 2 plastic cups of lukewarm water on the center console between Richard and Beatrice. "Please ensure your seatbacks are upright." "This is inhumane," Beatrice spat, though the fire was gone from her voice, replaced by a whining petulance. "I have low blood sugar." "And I have a liquidity crisis," Alex said from across the aisle, taking a sip of his coffee. "We all have our crosses to bear, Beatrice." The plane banked left, the engines dropping in pitch as they entered the holding pattern. Richard turned to Alex. The panic from the night before had calcified into a grim desperation. He had spent the last 6 hours doing mental math, and the numbers didn't work. "Thorne," Richard said, "listen to me. Let's make a deal. Real talk. B2B. "I'm listening," Alex said, not looking up from his window. "You buy the debt? Fine. Smart move. Aggressive. I respect it," Richard said, trying to channel his boardroom persona. "But if you liquidate me, you get pennies on the dollar. The assets are tied up in zoning litigation. You'll lose money. If you give me an extension, 6 months, I can flip the Chicago property, evict the tenants, build the complex, and pay you back with 15% interest. Everyone wins." Maya stopped eating. She looked at Alex, her breath hitching. Alex slowly turned his head. He looked at Richard with the clinical curiosity of a biologist studying a particularly resilient bacteria. "You still don't get it," Alex said. You think I did this for the money? It's always about money, Richard insisted. Don't give me the moral high ground crap. You're a billionaire. You didn't get there by being a saint. I got there by solving problems, Alex said. And you, Richard, are a problem. You are a systemic inefficiency in the human race. Alex reached into his bag and pulled out a folded document he had printed from the onboard thermal printer during the night. I didn't just buy your loan, Richard. I executed a clause in the distressed asset contract called Accelerated Transfer of Collateral. Since you technically defaulted the moment I called the loan and you couldn't pay, I seized the collateral immediately. The collateral? Richard whispered. The deed to the 4th Street block in Chicago, Alex said. I own the building now. As of... He checked his watch. 3 hours ago. Richard looked like he was going to vomit. You can't... And, Alex continued, his voice hard as steel. My first act as the new owner was to transfer the deed into a non-profit trust, the Williams Arts Foundation. I just invented it. I named it after Maya. Maya dropped her fork. It clattered onto the china plate. The trust has a strict charter, Alex explained, looking at Maya now. The building cannot be demolished. The rents are frozen at 2010 levels for all current tenants, and the ownership of each unit is being transferred to the families who have lived there for more than 10 years. Maya covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face instantly. You gave us our house. I gave you back what was yours, Alex said. Richard here was just holding it for you. Richard slumped back, his eyes rolling up slightly. He was having a physiological reaction to the loss of $40 million. Beatrice let out a shriek. You ruined us, she screamed. That project was our retirement. That was our leverage. You have plenty of other assets, Beatrice, Alex said coldly. I saw your portfolio. You'll just have to sell the house in the Hamptons, and the yacht, and maybe this jewelry. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Miller's voice boomed over the intercom, interrupting the chaos. We are on final approach to London Heathrow. Cabin crew, seats for landing. The plane dipped lower, the grey tarmac of Heathrow rushing up to meet them. The wheels touched down with a firm thud, the sound of reality reasserting itself. As the plane taxied to the gate, the dynamic in the cabin shifted physically. Richard looked small, shrunken. Beatrice looked old. Maya sat taller than she ever had in her life. The chime signaled arrival at the gate. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off, Sarah announced. Usually, Richard would be the first one up, elbowing people to get to the door. Today, he didn't move. He stared out the window at the rainy London tarmac. Alex stood up and grabbed his backpack. He looked at Maya. Grab your violin, Maya. We have places to be. We? Maya asked, wiping her eyes. I have a car waiting, Alex said. I'm not letting you take the tube with that instrument. I'm dropping you at the Royal Academy. Maya stood up, slinging the case over her shoulder. She looked down at Richard and Beatrice. They looked like statues of misery. Excuse me, Maya said, her voice clear and strong. I need to get past. Richard didn't move. Move, Richard, Alex commanded. Richard slowly swung his legs out of the way. Maya walked past him, her head high. As they reached the aircraft door, Veronica, the disgraced purser, was waiting to say goodbye to the passengers, looking pale and terrified. She wouldn't look Alex in the eye. Goodbye, Ms. Williams, Veronica mumbled. Goodbye, Veronica, Maya said pleasantly. Thank you for the flight. They stepped onto the jet bridge, the cool, damp air of London hitting their faces. But as they walked up the ramp toward the terminal, they saw that the reception committee wasn't just a driver. 2 officers in the distinct uniforms of the London Metropolitan Police were waiting at the top of the jet bridge. Beside them stood a man in a suit, holding a briefcase. Richard and Beatrice stumbled out of the plane behind Alex and Maya. When Richard saw the police, he stopped dead. "Oh no," Richard whispered. "No, no, no." Alex turned around, walking backward slowly, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Oh, I forgot to mention one small detail, Richard," Alex called out. "When I audited your accounts to buy the loan, I found some irregularities. Wire transfers to offshore accounts that weren't declared. Tax evasion is a serious offence in the UK and the US. My legal team felt obligated to forward the findings to the authorities." One of the officers stepped forward. "Richard van der Hoven." Richard looked at Beatrice. Beatrice looked at the officer, then took a distinct step away from her husband. "I don't know what he did," Beatrice said quickly to the police. "I just sign what he tells me to sign." "Beatrice!" Richard gasped, betrayed. "Mr. van der Hoven, please come with us," the officer said. Alex put a hand on Maya's shoulder and guided her away from the scene. "Come on, Maya. You have a concerto to play. Let the trash take itself out." The rain in London was relentless, a grey curtain draping over the city. But inside the black Rolls-Royce Phantom, the world was quiet and dry. Alex sat in the back seat, scrolling through news alerts on his phone, while Maya stared out the window, clutching her violin case like a lifeline. They were pulling up to the wrought iron gates of the Royal Academy of Music. The building loomed like a cathedral of sound, ancient and imposing. "I'm underdressed," Maya whispered, looking down at her thrift store blazer. "Everyone else will be in concert blacks." "You're not there to model, Maya," Alex said, putting his phone away. "You're there to dominate. Remember the plane. Remember Richard. If you can play through that, you can play through anything." He handed her a card. It was his personal number. "Call me when you're done. I have one more surprise, but you have to earn it first." Maya stepped out into the rain, the cold air shocking her lungs. She ran up the steps, checked in at the front desk, and was ushered into a waiting room filled with other hopefuls. The air was thick with the sounds of tuning strings and nervous scales. But unlike the flight, Maya didn't feel the urge to shrink. She thought of the deed to her apartment building, now safe in a trust. She thought of her mother, who would never have to worry about rent again. The weight of survival had been lifted off her shoulders. All that was left was the music. "Maya Williams," the proctor called out. She walked into the main hall. It was a cavernous room with high ceilings and a single spotlight focused on the center stage. 3 judges sat behind a long oak table in the shadows. One of them was Sir Julian Sterling, the most terrifying conductor in Britain. "Begin when you are ready," Sterling said, his voice bored. Maya closed her eyes. She didn't start with a tremble this time. She attacked the strings. She played the Tchaikovsky concerto with a ferocity that startled the judges. She wasn't playing for a grade. She was playing the soundtrack of her own liberation. She poured the anger of the TSA line, the humiliation of the boarding gate, and the triumph of the landing into every note. The music soared, filling the empty hall, bouncing off the rafters. When she finished, there was silence. Not the awkward silence of the plane, but the heavy, resonant silence of awe. Sir Julian Sterling leaned forward into the light. He took off his glasses. "Miss Williams, who taught you to play like that?" "My grandfather," Maya said, breathless. "And a very long flight." Sterling smiled, a rare sight. "Welcome to the Academy, Miss Williams. We expect you in the fall." Maya burst out of the doors an hour later, her face wet with rain and tears. Alex was waiting by the car, leaning against the hood with a coffee in hand. He didn't need to ask. He saw the glow on her face. "I got it!" she screamed, running toward him. "I got it! Full ride!" Alex laughed, high-fiving her. "I never doubted it. Now check your phone. You have a text from your mum." Maya pulled out her phone. There was a photo message. It was her mum, standing in the hallway of their apartment building in Chicago. She was holding a letter from the Williams Arts Foundation. She was crying, but she was smiling. The text read, "They say we own it, baby. They say nobody can ever move us. Is this real?" Maya typed back, "It's real, Mama. We're safe. And one more thing," Alex said, handing her his iPad. "Look at the news." Breaking news. Real estate tycoon arrested at Heathrow. Richard van der Hoeven detained on charges of international wire fraud and tax evasion following a tip-off from Aerolux Airways' internal audit. Van der Hoeven estates files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The photo showed Richard being led into a police van, looking disheveled and broken. Beatrice was visible in the background, shielding her face with a designer bag, distancing herself from him. "Calmer," Alex said, taking back the iPad. "It flies supersonic." "Thank you," Maya said, hugging her violin case. "I don't know how to thank you." "You just did," Alex said, opening the car door for her. "You proved that excellence is the only currency that matters. Now let's get some food. I know a burger joint that doesn't require a reservation, and I promise, the Wi-Fi works." As the car pulled away, blending into the London traffic, Maya looked back at the academy, then down at her violin. She realized that while the first-class ticket had brought her here, it was her own courage that had allowed her to stay. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was the pilot of her own life. The story of Flight 902 is a powerful reminder that character is revealed not in comfort, but in conflict. Richard and Beatrice believed that their net worth gave them the right to treat others as invisible, but they failed to realize that the most powerful person in the room is often the quietest. Maya's journey from a harassed passenger to a scholarship winner and the owner of her family's future wasn't just luck. It was the result of preparation meeting opportunity. Alexander Thorne may have provided the plane and the power, but it was Maya who had to pick up the bow and play. It teaches us that while money can buy first-class seats, it cannot buy class itself. And sometimes the universe, or a hoodie-wearing billionaire, is watching, ready to balance the scales when you least expect it. And that is the incredible story of how a billionaire went undercover to save a prodigy and take down a bully. It's a satisfying ending, isn't it? Seeing someone like Richard finally face the consequences of his actions while Maya gets the future she deserves. If this story moved you, or if you've ever had to deal with an entitled Karen or Kevin while traveling, hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. And I want to know from you, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen happen on an airplane? Tell me your story in the comments down below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story about karma hitting back. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind to the person sitting next to you. You never know who they might be.